That's the sound of another sale on your online Shopify store. But did you know that Shopify powers in-person selling too? From events to farmers markets to shows, Shopify is the sound of selling everywhere. I've definitely been selling at an event and struggled between reconciling payment processors, inventory before and after the event, and easy reporting. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. Prep for your next event with hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/startupcpg, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/startupcpg to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/startupcpg.
Yeah, I mean, to Ben & Jerry's credit, like they answered the email, right? And at that point in 2020, we were considerably smaller. They were eager to work with a small emerging brand. I encourage everyone to just try. Like, worst case, you don't get a response, but then you just go at another angle.
Welcome to the Startup CPG podcast. I'm your host, Jessie Freitag. When you peruse Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavors, do you ever think, what would my flavor be if I were famous? Maybe that's just me, but perhaps you dream about your own brand one day collaborating with Ben & Jerry's. This became a reality for Partake Foods, and when I saw the news, I wanted to know the behind the scenes of how a collaboration like this gets to market. Partake makes inclusive, allergy-friendly snacks that give delicious peace of mind to those with dietary restrictions, along with how is this so good enjoyment. Partake's collaboration with Ben & Jerry's all started with a cold email in 2020 from Marlo, Giudice, who is one of Partake's 3 total team members at the time. Now their Ben & Jerry's collaboration flavor, Oatmeal Dream Pie, launched this year and has been added to the Ben & Jerry's Evergreen lineup, available nationwide in Target, Walgreens, and more retailers near you. Partake has also experienced other very impressive growth the past few years. Marlo is now Partake's Vice President of Sales, Strategic Channels. There are nearly 20 people on the Partake team, and their cookies and snacks will be available in over 13,000 stores as of this July 2023. Listen in as Marlo shares about her career journey from culinary school to food brand founder to selling her food company to working with Partake Foods, the story behind Marlo's cold outreach to Ben & Jerry's and her tips for reaching out to dream partners, the process of working with Ben & Jerry's R&D team to develop the final flavor, how Partake had to become an ingredient supplier to support the collaboration, tips for being a great partner as an emerging brand, Partake's strategy around the food service channel, how to be pleasantly persistent and stay organized in your outreach, and more. Hi, Marlo. Welcome to the show today. How are you?
Hi, Jessie. I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
So nice to get to chat with you after we kind of met on LinkedIn. And so it's super nice to get to catch up. I'm wondering if, to start us off, you could tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your role at Partake and Partake itself.
Sure. So I am Marlo Giudice, and I am our VP of Strategic Channel Sales at Partake. And what that means at Partake is that I oversee our food service and alternative channel sales, as well as strategic partnerships. So really whatever falls outside of traditional grocery, retail, mass, and club is under my purview. And it's a little bit of the Wild West, but it's why I love it. And it's so much fun. And then Partake, for folks who are not familiar with the brand, we make allergy-friendly snacks. We make graham crackers and cookies and baking and breakfast mixes that are all certified vegan and gluten-free, kosher and non-GMO, and they're all produced in a facility that's top 9 allergen free. So they're really inclusive, and inclusivity is really at the core of our existence and our mission and the why we exist, just bringing everyone together around the same table to enjoy the best that life has to offer.
That's amazing. I love it. And yeah, the regular listeners know that my household is gluten-free because I have family members with celiac. And so I've enjoyed the Partake products for a long time. I think the birthday cake cookie is one of my favorites. Really love it. And so when I saw a post from Marlo on LinkedIn talking about a Ben and Jerry's and Partake collaboration. And my first thought was immediately, I need to buy this. Like, where is it? I need to buy it ASAP. But also I was like, that sounds so fascinating to learn how a brand, especially on a little bit on the smaller side for our community with smaller brands. I mean, Partake is a lot larger than many of our community members, but isn't in the top 10 largest food conglomerates in the world levels or anything.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like to collaborate with a company on Ben and Jerry's scale? And I was super curious. And thankfully, Marlo was like, yeah, I was open to chatting about it. So that's going to be a lot of our conversation today. But also in my research of looking up Marlo, I saw that you have an incredible background in CPG and the baking world. And so I was wondering if you could also just tell us a little bit about your career journey so far and the company that you had. And would just kind of love to learn a bit more about what that looked like and how you got into the role of that you're doing now.
Yeah, it's a bit atypical and unique, and there were some hard left turns in there for sure. But I started my career out actually in tech, in digital marketing and advertising technology. And that's what moved me to San Francisco from New York, was an opportunity at a SaaS company, software as a service. And through that move, this sounds convoluted, but I promise I'll get there. Through that move, I met the man who's now my husband in San Francisco, but he was living across the street from a culinary school that is now shut down. But the woman that owned it was like an icon in food in San Francisco, Mary Risley. It was called Tante Marie's. And I had always loved baking, loved cooking, and thought maybe someday I'll go to culinary school or I'll go to pastry school. But I was never quite ready to quit my full-time job and really just jump in full-time with that passion, because I wasn't sure if it would really go beyond just being a passion, and if it's something I truly wanted to make a career out of, because I'm not very, particularly on the culinary side, I'm not a night person. And so working like back of house food service at a restaurant, I knew that was not for me. I don't do well staying up late anymore. So I actually started to just explore the programs that Tante Marie had, and they had a part-time pastry program that was nights and weekends. So I didn't have to quit my job in tech, and I could just sort of dip my toe into this passion of mine and see if it was something that I wanted to pursue in a more serious way. And it was like an incredible program that was just a group of women who loved to bake and was really like passionate about learning the fundamentals and the mechanics and the chemistry behind it. And we would bake for maybe 3 hours or so and then sit down and eat everything we made. So it was just like phenomenal. And I would sometimes come home and wake my husband up with like hot, like pain au chocolat or like, fresh pastry. And he was like, okay, I think that's actually why he proposed ultimately for the potential to have that happen more frequently in life. But what that experience taught me was that I think it was just inspiration. There were a lot of women who went through that program who went on to found really successful pastry companies, both nationally and regionally in the Bay Area. And I thought, but they can do it. Why can't I? Right? Like I was very naive as to what that would even mean. And I knew nothing about the food industry. But I knew that I had this recipe that my grandmother had passed down to me, this like secret recipe. And she's still alive and kicking. She's 98, and she doesn't make this cookie anymore, but it's essentially mandel bread, which is like Jewish biscotti. So it's a cookie that's baked twice, and it tends to have a slightly more tender crumb than biscotti does, primarily due to the fact that it's made with oil instead of butter. And so it retains a bit more fat, and we ended up calling it soft baked biscotti, but I created this company, Marlo's Bake Shop, with my grandmother's recipe and just learned as I went. And I founded the company in 2012, quit my job in tech in 2013 and started doing it full time. And initially thought, let's just start selling in concentric circles around the Bay Area where I'm able to just build up some brand awareness, and did that, and then got some really great national partners like the now defunct Dean and DeLuca. But really kept the brand kind of specialty, and we never really entered like conventional grocery. But it was through that experience that I really learned, I wouldn't dare to say everything about the food industry, but the basics. And what it means to really like hunt for new sales and pioneer a brand, and what the distribution ecosystem looks like, and pricing architecture. And so it was a really fascinating experience. And, I did the bookkeeping. I didn't do the production after the first 6 months. I had a co-packer, but I did do the production initially, and even just the contracts with co-packers, just all of that type of negotiation. I just learned a ton. And it was actually through that experience that I ended up meeting Denise Woodard, the founder of Partake. We were both trying to hawk our cookies at a snack fair at Twitter headquarters, trying to get into their pantry program. And I met her and her delightful husband, Jeremy, who were both just incredibly charismatic and kind. And we kept the conversation going from there. But yeah, I ended up selling the Marlo's Bake Shop brand in 2019, and started with Denise that summer, actually.
Oh, wow.
in some consulting. Yeah, I said, you know what? I'm based out west. You're in New York. I already have the cookie buyers' contacts. I have some relationships there. I was working for a juice company at that point, leading sales, called Good Use, and we took like ugly produce and made it into fresh pressed juices delivered to offices all over the Bay Area. And so I was already going to the distributors. I was already going to the offices, and so I took Partake with me and started just doing some light sales for them, and ultimately that transitioned into a full-time opportunity with the company.
Wow, that's amazing. That experience of your business that's so valuable, and just so much work that you did building that out.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. And I love that you met Denise at an event, and like, I know that a lot of the founders in our community definitely look up to Denise and Partake, and so that's really cool that you met her in an event and then were able to start consulting, because you've been at Partake, I think, a little over 3 years. Like, how has the company grown kind of since you joined? Like, I guess, maybe can you kind of describe the stage to us a little bit now, and then kind of the growth that's happened since you've been there?
Yeah, of course. So when we first started working together in 2019, and these are not going to be precise, but I want to say we finished the year in around 300 doors. And I was trying to sort of supplement the retail pursuits that Denise was doing in terms of just grocery doors with those alternative channel sales, and just driving some brand awareness through the pantry programs at offices. And so about 300 doors in 2019. And then we, through a partner that we just got some news yesterday, by July of this year, 2023, we'll be in about 13,000 doors.
Wow.
So it's been pretty fast growth, which has been tremendously exciting, super busy. But a lot of that initial growth, and then it just sort of, it was very cumulative in that shortly after I came on board full time, Denise had been in the background negotiating with Target, and had planned this full nationwide launch with Target for the spring of 2020. And that was really, the first national partner that is just such a tremendous partner that took us from, being in 300 doors to very quickly overnight being in 2,000 doors. And then having those sort of credentials of working with Target and getting that experience and getting that visibility enabled us to continue to grow at retail.
Yeah. Wow. So how many people are on the team now, and the sales team as well in particular?
Yeah. So when I started with Denise, I was the second hire. We had me and a head of ops, and now we are a team of 19. And the sales team, we split it up right now. We have a retail sales team and we have a strategic channel sales team. The retail sales team is 4, and then the strategic channel sales team is 2. And we supplement that with some fractional sales resources that are external to the organization.
Okay.
And then we have brokers that support the just sales organization as a whole as well.
Okay, very cool. That's super helpful to set the stage. And I also want to kind of, describe the flavor a little bit too, as we kind of dive into the details. So the flavor is called Oatmeal Dream Pie, and it's a non-dairy Ben & Jerry's flavor. And there was a roundup recently by Tasting Table, and they named the flavor the #1 non-dairy flavor of all of Ben & Jerry's flavors. They called tasting it Holy Euphoria, which I thought was a great description.
Me too.
I hunted, I was like waiting for it to launch, like checking Targets everywhere, and I was a little early. But once I found it, I brought it home, And like it's really incredible because it has essentially the oatmeal, cream cookies that are gluten-free. And then you've got some marshmallow swirls in there. It's made with like sun butter so that there's no peanuts. And it's really incredible. And my husband, especially as someone with celiac, when he took a bite, he was like, oh my gosh, this is like a hit of nostalgia from my childhood of the little like oatmeal cream pie snacks that he's like, I haven't been able to have those for years. And this just like hits perfectly. It's so tasty and it has, great ingredients as well. And so it's just a really impressive flavor all around. And so I wanted to just kind of describe it a little to people to set the stage. And I hope everyone gets to try it as well, because it's just an incredible flavor. It does not taste dairy free or any of those things. It doesn't taste like it's free from all these allergens, because I think it does have soy, but otherwise everything else, like you wouldn't know. Like it's just an absolutely incredible flavor.
Yeah, the Ben and Jerry's team is like truly remarkable in their flavor development. And it's exactly what I mean. The intended flavor profile is exactly that little Debbie, oatmeal cream pie. So I'm so happy for your husband that he's able to have that tasting experience again, because that was the intention.
We finished the first pint and we drove right back to the store to get another one. So
Love it.
It's awesome. So yeah, I want to kind of go back in time a little bit. I believe that you reached out cold to Ben and Jerry's in like June of 2020. So can you like take us back to that time? Like, what were you working on? What were you thinking of? What did that look like, to just kind of send an email out into the void? Would love to hear more.
Yeah. I mean, so nobody ever forgets 2020 for a myriad of reasons, but we were really in the throes of the pandemic. We were all working remotely, our team of 3, with just, trying to think of, let's get creative. Let's, brainstorm some alternative sales segments or channels. Like, what have we not, what's the stone we haven't unturned? Because as you may recall, the necessities were getting, the essentials were getting restocked and prioritized both by retailers and distributors. And as much as cookies are a necessity in my house, they are not necessarily in everyone's home. And so, it just wasn't a priority for our distributor partners to think about restocking us as much, or for the retailers to be dedicating space to us, or the category as a whole. And so we started thinking about categories that are a little bit more essential, or like sort of like recession proof, if you will, or crisis proof. And we thought about ice cream and how people eat ice cream in good times, in celebrations, and also in bad, right? You sort of turn to your favorite pint to just find comfort when you may be upset. And so and then we thought about, okay, well, who are the dream ice cream brands that we would love to work with? And Ben and Jerry's was number 1 on that list. And so I did some LinkedIn stalking, which I think every salesperson has to hone that skill. Yeah. And some, email naming convention guesses. I probably had several incorrect. I was like, first initial, last name, just tested all of them. And one went out and didn't bounce back. And I just positioned it as we are an allergy friendly, inclusive brand that makes delicious cookies. Would you like to try some? So not a heavy, not a big ask. Certainly not a long email, no deck attached, just like, can we send you some cookies? Because my hope was that who's going to say no to some free samples? And worst case scenario, we send them and they don't like them, and okay, no big deal. But my contact answered, and he was, graciously accepted the free samples. And I think so much of the opportunities and the great partnerships we've had at Partake it's a timing thing. And it was just good timing for them in thinking about their non-dairy line and how they can expand on offerings, because big organizations like that with their innovation pipeline, they're working 12 to 18 months out in terms of how long it will take to commercialize and bring to market. So they were seeing, I think, some initial success in that line and wanting to expand the flavor profiles. And we just sort of reached out at the right time. And so if it had been a no, I still would have probably followed up 3 months later and then 6 months later. And I generally, I'm pleasantly persistent and just take it as a not right now, until I get a pretty hard no. So
yeah,
that's how it kicked off. And then we just sort of continued the conversations. The Unilever team came in, which is their parent company, and we talked a little bit about supply chain and sourcing requirements. But that was 2020, and the flavor released in 2023. So it's a long process.
for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about some of the in between too. So they tried some of the cookies. I assume that, I don't know if you sent them an assortment of the Partake flavors, or kind of, what did it how did it kick off from there of, oh, were they like, oh, these are really good, we want to send some to our R&D team, or how did the ideas kind of get started to go toward the final flavor that we see now?
So I sent a sort of full suite of what we had currently in market, and with the sort of asterisk of, if you don't see something that you need, let's talk about it. We had an amazing product developer. We currently have an amazing product developer. And so I knew that if there was something that they were looking for that was specific and that we didn't currently make, we could talk about developing it for them, special. And that's ultimately what we did. But yeah, we just sent them everything that we were making, and sort of talked through some of the flavor profiles that they were considering. And we went through, I want to say maybe 6 rounds of, hey, can you guys make this? And we were like, yeah, we can. And then we'd go back and tell our magician, like, can you make this? And she'd be like, yeah, I can make that. And we'd send it out, and they'd try it, and we'd come back, and it'd be like, well, that's not quite right. And then finally landed on this, hey, can you make an oatmeal raisin cookie? And that cookie also went through probably 5 or 6 different recipe iterations before we landed on the one that they really liked. So it was like, hey, can you take up the vanilla, or can you take down the brown sugar, or can we, increase the raisin flavor profile? So it was those like tweaks back and forth, where at that point, I was a liaison and just sort of working as the conduit between product development on Partake side and the Ben & Jerry's R&D team.
Oh, that's very interesting. And so at some point the raisins got dropped from the cookies, right? Because there's no raisins in the final product. Like, was there like consumer testing or anything as well too, as it got closer to the final? And did you get to have any input into, like I said, that does, there's sun butter in there. So like, to make sure that the product remained, free from a lot of allergens, like, how did it get closer to the finish line?
So we had raisin paste in it from the beginning, so that it could be an oatmeal raisin cookie. And even the final product has raisin paste, but it was just sort of the quantity of raisin paste in the final recipe that got tweaked. I think from a consumer eating experience, it's just more uniform when you don't have like these big chunks of raisins in it. But yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot the rest of your question.
I was just curious if you got to have any feedback as far as, or if they from the beginning didn't want to have a lot of allergens in the product.
Yeah, I think we were really clear from the beginning, too, that it was important for Partake as a brand to partner with them on an inclusive product, on something that would not only be vegan, but that would reflect the allergy friendliness of the Partake brand. And so with the cookies being gluten-free, that was really important to them. So we knew right off the bat, like, this is going to be vegan, this is going to be gluten-free. And as we developed the flavor, we were able to identify the other allergens that it would be free from as well. And Ben & Jerry's has, to their credit, really stringent requirements around working with fair trade suppliers for, ingredients like vanilla and sugar. And so that was a great way for us to work with those suppliers as well, and support them.
Yeah. Was a lot of the back and forth over email, or did you have, calls as well? Or like, I'm just kind of curious about the collaboration process, 'cause since they have their own full team, whether, they were just kind of asking you for things over email, or whether you'd all jump on the phone.
It was both. We had standing, I want to say for maybe a year or slightly less, we had standing monthly calls to talk about progress and just ensure that everybody was tracking towards that first production run date, because that was the run that they would need for their sales teams to be able to go out and sell the product in during their category reviews. So it was important that we were all tracking towards being able to produce the product for them by that time, particularly given it was like a brand new SKU for us and a brand new pack out. We had not done before, like a bulk bag and box scenario for any of our suppliers, or I'm sorry, any of our customers. So it was working through what that looks like with our co-man and then getting all the specs. And at that point, we were becoming an ingredient supplier, which was also new for Partake. So there was a lot of paperwork required that we had to learn how to do and ensure we were doing, properly into the legal standards that were required of us. So it was, I think, a great experience for our team in just understanding the sort of complexity around being an ingredient supplier, and allowed us to think, do we want to do this again? Do we not want to do this again? Is it something that feels like a growth channel for us? And so it was an amazing experience. And for me, just to sort of usher that through with both sides and both teams was a great learning experience as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, your co-manufacturer experience from your past and all of that probably comes in handy with all of these relationships and these kind of things.
Yes, definitely. Although, there's technology that changes every year, and the consumer's changing preferences too. So there's always something new to learn for sure.
Yeah. And I guess, this isn't totally related to this specific collaboration, but since you work a lot in this channel of kind of finding other, non-traditional retail ways, like how many other collaborations or items were you working on while all this was going on? Like, how much of your time were you kind of like tracking on this as part of your brain space, and how much were you working on other initiatives? I'm kind of curious for your workload, how a project like this fit in.
Yeah, I mean, it varied depending upon the stage of the project that we were in. Like as we got towards the finish line, it definitely took up more brain space and just ensuring that all parties were in the places they need to be to execute on time and in full. But I think what the sort of one of the pros of having this sort of longer lead time sales opportunity is that you are able to sort of float in and out as you maintain or your core book of business, or as you hunt and prospect for other opportunities. And this is something that just continues on in the background. So any given week it might have been 30 minutes to an hour, and other weeks it might have flexed to 2 to 4 hours. But it definitely varied.
Are you looking to grow your product sales with specific retailers? Do you wish you had store-level information about your products? What if there was a way to make sure your next product launch was a success? Social Nature is here to help. Social Nature is an all-in-one shopper marketing platform designed to help emerging brands win at retail. Powered by 1 million natural shoppers, they help you move units off the shelf quickly and get you the store-level insights you need to scale your business. If you're looking to grow at retailers like Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger, H-E-B, Wegmans, Walmart, and more, email marketing@socialnature.com or visit business.socialnature.com to learn how. And make sure to mention hearing this message on the Startup CPG podcast. That's business.socialnature.com, or the link is in the show notes. Do you feel like your email and SMS marketing campaigns are falling flat? If you want to increase customer retention and convert leads, a winning email and SMS marketing strategy is a must-have. Strategy Maven Agency transforms your email and SMS program to help you increase sales, build real customer loyalty, and focus on impactful results. Strategy Maven Agency delivers to help scale your brand, especially if you feel frustrated by revenue plateaus, were let down by another agency, would rather use your time to focus on other initiatives, or if you've let your email and SMS program get a little neglected. They are experts, aka mavens, and will treat your CPG brand like their own. So say goodbye to cookie-cutter strategies and promises without execution. For a free account audit, go to strategymavenagency.com and mention Startup CPG. That's Strategy Maven, MAVEN, agency.com, and be sure to mention Startup CPG for a free account audit. And you mentioned a little bit the process of kind of getting ready to essentially be an ingredient supplier? Kind of, I'm curious, like, was the final flavor, like, name and everything decided when you got the, like, hey, this is the cookie that we're going with, or did they finalize the cookie and then they went to finalizing the flavor? Like, at what point did you get the go ahead, hey, we want you to manufacture this specific cookie? You can kind of scale it up from R&D to working with your co-manufacturer on the bulk pack.
Yeah, so I want to say it was probably late 2021, early 2022 when we got the green light that this is the flavor we want to move forward with. Let's, all systems go, from the Ben and Jerry's team. But we didn't know flavor name for many months after that, and I think they were still sort of like, their brand team was thinking about things and gelling of like, how do we market this and how does it fit in with the rest of our portfolio? And for a long time, we thought it was just going to be a limited time offering and something that was more in and out. And I do remember really specifically when we learned that this was like an evergreen flavor that was going to be year round, the Partake. We were all so excited to hear that, because it was just, it's there's more opportunity there, but it's also, there's not this like frenzied rush that you have to tell everybody to get in stores by a certain time or they'll miss it. There's this knowing that the flavor is good enough to be available year round and to be really folded into their core line of like iconic flavors.
At what point did you find that out? Like, was it after it launched and they got some initial feedback, or was it running it through like their consumer feedback team? When was that decision kind of made? I'm curious what it takes for, if you learned kind of what it takes to go from being a limited release to an evergreen flavor.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the sort of criteria was on their side to determine, hey, this is not an LTO. But we learned about it in the summer of 2023. So some, like, maybe a couple months before we did our first production run. And so it was definitely before the flavor was released, and we couldn't talk about it. We knew it was happening, but we couldn't talk about it for months and months. And so we were doubly excited at that point that it was going to be around for all year round, and that it would be an amazing flavor name and flavor profile, but that we just have to sort of sit on our hands and wait until we could say it.
Oh, that makes sense. And I'm sure that, Ben and Jerry's must have so much data and information around consumer trends and what people like about ice cream. And I think they used to have another oatmeal flavor that definitely wasn't as good. So to have something like this to add to their line is just incredible. And I feel very excited as a consumer that it's not a limited release, because I kind of assumed initially that, that maybe it would be, but to know that this is going to be continually there is very exciting. So I can only imagine for your team how exciting that was.
Yes, very exciting.
Awesome. And then I guess, I don't know if this is I feel like as an operations person, like, what kind, and if this is okay to ask, like, what kind of quantity of cookies are we talking about bulk packing out? Like, is it like truckloads, or like, was it a big, production ramp up to, I assume Ben and Jerry's scale is large, but also you're in 13,000 retailers. So I'm kind of curious how the production fit into your regular lineups productions. How many cookies, I want to picture the cookies in my mind.
Yeah. So we do a 20-pound bag and box of those mini cookies. And, I don't know how many of the mini cookies fit in 20 pounds, but I could probably extrapolate that out for you and get back to you with some numbers, but it's thousands of cookies in that box. And, we do, I think initially they do a forecast based off of that sort of consumer data and research and that wealth of data they have from the decades, that they've been in business, of what they think a comparable flavor profile will sell. And so it was through that we were able to do some projections and work with our co-man to just sort of fold it into our regular production planning. We were making that size cookie as a chocolate chip cookie that we were selling into Target. And so we had a line, production line that already was making this mini cookie. And so it was just a matter of switching the flavor and then sort of changing the pack out on it. So I think once like you kind of do something once or twice, then it becomes more comfortable. And our co-man's a great partner that has done all sorts of pack outs. And so I don't think it was really new to them at all. And so it was new to us, but we, like anything else, we learn as we go and try to make the smartest decisions possible.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. So we're talking thousands upon thousands of cookies shipping out.
Yes, thousands upon thousands, thousands of pounds. And within each pound, there's, let's see, like probably 120, 150 cookies.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. So once you got the green light from the Ben and Jerry's team, like, hey, you can start telling people, like, when was that compared to when it started hitting shelves? And then in your role, like, what did you kind of start doing with that information? Like, how were you able to kind of leverage that for the Partake brand and start using that in your work?
So we were able to announce publicly January 10th or 11th of 2023. And then it started hitting, we collaborate, we didn't collaborate, but they told us, hey, all of our PR is going to go live on this date. So it was an amazing amount of brand awareness towards Partake. Through the press that Ben & Jerry's got for this flavor, and just the number of impressions was incredible, and I think was one of our more successful launches too. And so shortly thereafter, the product started rolling into the first few grocery banners. So like a couple Ahold banners, it rolled out in February, and then Wegmans came shortly thereafter. And I know it went live in Target this month. And we just had an all team this week in Chicago, and we were able to go into some Walgreens and find it in Walgreens and eat it, enjoy it as a team. So it's sort of rolling based upon when the category resets happen at the retailers.
Okay.
And then our team really, like, once a product launches, marketing, our marketing team is fabulous, and they really run with it to leverage those impressions to drive additional PR and brand awareness for Partake. I think, when it comes to how I leverage it in sales, I mention it on sales calls as just an example of some of our strategic partners, because I do think, to your point earlier, Partake really is punching above its weight here. We're an emerging brand, but we are still small. And to have a partner like Ben & Jerry's is such a dream. And it is a little unusual. And so we do certainly like to mention it, because it does show, I think, the level of rigor and commitment that we have around supply chain and food safety, because we have to in order to partner with somebody like that. But it just also shows the sort of playing field that we're on right now, and how we do like to punch above our weight and take those opportunities, even though they may seem a little bit further down the line for a more mature company.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first thought of, like, just the kind of level that it shows that Partake's at, because again, it's my operations brain, but I think of, like, oh man, like, I'm sure Ben & Jerry's has very rigorous food safety, and so I'm thinking about all the paperwork and everything, and just the level of, like, lead times and planning that goes into it. So yeah, it shows you're able to operate on a playing field that's just extremely impressive, for the size of brand. And so that's really cool. I hope that means, more people see that and leads to more really awesome collaborations.
Yeah, I mean, to Ben & Jerry's credit, like, they answered the email, right? And at that point in 2020, we were considerably smaller. We've grown since then, but we had just gotten our Target placement, and that was our first, like, really big national retailer. And so I do give them a lot of credit for engaging with us at the outset and entertaining the conversations. And I think we had a lot to bring to the table, but not as much as we necessarily do now in terms of, like, brand awareness and household penetration. So they were eager to work with a small emerging brand. And so I encourage everyone to just try. Like, worst case, you don't get a response, but then you just go at another angle.
Yeah. And it's nice to hear. I mean, so many of us enjoy Ben & Jerry's as a brand. Jerry actually came to my university and college and spoke and was just so nice and so down to earth. And I was like, this makes me like the brand even more. And so it's always nice to hear good things about a large brand, and that they were willing to, like, support a more emerging brand. And so it's really positive. I think that's really cool to hear. You mentioned, like, kind of the tip of, like, to smaller brands, like, it never hurts to reach out. I'm curious if you have any other kind of, like, tips that you would give other people that, like, have dream collaborators for their brand, that are, and they want to reach out. What advice would you give them?
Yes, for sure. I don't know that any of this is original. But I've found the most luck in getting responses from cold emails is to like make the subject line relevant but compelling, and then make the body of the email short. Like keep it concise. I do ask sort of more open-ended questions to try and warrant a response from them. And I often, like if I'm talking about Partake, I always make an assumption that they have not heard of us, and so I hyperlink our website, just in case, just to make it easy. I think the easier you can make it for somebody to press reply, the higher the odds of actually getting a conversation going. So if it means making it easy for them to understand who you are and what you do, I don't think it's reasonable to expect these really busy buyers to open up several attachments or a deck. And so sometimes I'll paste an image within the body of the email that I think is particularly compelling or just highly relevant to the content, that I think might be like a little bit of a like dangling carrot that they might want to respond to. And honestly, if I don't hear a response, I generally give folks like 2 weeks to respond. I'm much more patient than I used to be, but then I just always follow up. Sometimes it's not the second time. Sometimes it really is the third time, the third follow up where you get a response. But again, it's being pleasantly persistent and not pestering or badgering people, and understanding that it might be a timing issue and it's not right now. And if it is like, hey, that's totally fine. Like, can I circle back with you in a few months? And getting their buy-in to do that. And so that way, when you do come back to them with that thread, they know it's because you already got their recommendation to follow up.
Is there anything on the being a good partner side, I guess, of like once you kind of started the process of, okay, we're going to do a collaboration with this larger brand. Like, is there any advice you have there of just like being a good partner or being prepared or being organized that you think help set this collaboration up for success on your side that a smaller brand could kind of do to, just essentially be a good partner?
I think preparation is a huge one. Everyone is busy, but particularly with these larger companies, just valuing everyone's time and ensuring that you're prepared and what that might mean for each engagement. Like if it's a call, do you have the agenda? Do they have the agenda? Making sure that everyone's on the same page of what the content of the call is going to be. If there are additional stakeholders within your organization that need to be present on the call so that you don't have to have a follow-up because the people who could answer the question weren't there, or the people who are the decision makers weren't there. And then being really thorough with note taking has always helped me. We use a CRM at Partake that I really like because I like to be able to refer back to emails and phone calls. And this does a lot of that in an automated fashion. So that's been really helpful. And I think just, again, being like pleasantly persistent. People have a lot of projects going, as do I, at any given time. So if they forget to respond, if it's something that's already in process, just with a gentle nudge, like bringing them back to let's get back on the path and let's keep moving forward, to ensure that, again, like if I've forecasted it for this year, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it's being executed on in this calendar year so we can realize the revenue that's been projected.
Yeah. Well, that's super helpful. That's great. And are there any other projects or collaborations that you've worked on that have come out and are out in the world that you can share about? And are there any upcoming ones that maybe you can tease, or it's okay if things are still top secret?
There is an upcoming one that is still somewhat top secret, but it's very exciting for us. It's in the lodging space, and by mid-August, we'll be able to talk about it.
Nice.
So if we do a follow-up conversation, it will be public, but we're really excited. And having, these strategic national partners has been so much fun, and just a great learning experience and a great way to expand your network, and to really learn about channels outside of groceries so that you can be a more omni-channel brand. I think sometimes brands wait to pursue some of these alternative opportunities, but they can be a great way to sort of prop up your retail business, because bringing that brand awareness to folks out of home allows them to see your brand in stores. And it's almost, if they have to pay $3 for a grab and go item when they're out of home to try it, it's a lower, a lower risk trial than it is to buy a $6 full size box, if you will, at the grocery store if they haven't tried it yet. So it's a great way to drive trial that's paid. It's great marketing. And again, it's just another brand impression that is helpful for increasing brand awareness.
Right.
So started early.
Yeah. And you mentioned, because you work on the food service channel, like that's part of this as well. Like, are there any, because our community, we've had an increasing interest in, all the food service channels. I'm curious if there's any channels that you're, more focused on coming up, because food services, there's so many different opportunities in the area. Like, I'm curious what you're focused on, if you're focused on lots of different areas. And like, for Partake as a brand, if there's any, college and university, or kind of, we've been learning about the kind of the different parts, and I'm curious kind of where you focus.
Yeah, I sort of like the double-edged sword of these channels is that there are so many different segments to pursue that you can really easily spread yourself too thin. And so what we tried to do is pick a few segments within food service and within alternative channels for 2023 that we felt would provide the most impact to the brand, and really double down on those. And so for us, we really are operating within this framework of thinking about meeting our consumer where they live, work, and play. And so that translates for us into to travel, to lodging, to parks and entertainment, and then work, certainly. So OCS, which is office coffee services, and those sort of B&I corporate pantry services as well. And so that's where we've just tried to really embed ourselves with our distributor partners, work with the end customers, and really saturate those relationships and those customers. And then, next year we'll continue to evolve and move on a little bit. But we'll be attending NRA, the National Restaurant Association show, this year for the first time, and do hope to start some conversations with quick service restaurants and fast casual dining chains, knowing that those are, again, sort of working on a 12 to 18 month sort of menu cycle change, starting those conversations now.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else that you wanted to share just in general, or about this Ben & Jerry's collab? Anything else that you wanted to, any parting thoughts that you had before we go into some, links and where to find Partake and this collab flavor?
I would just say, I mean, to the point of just cold emails, like, they still do work.
Yeah.
But be patient and be kind and be pleasantly persistent, and sometimes people will respond, and then just make sure you're capitalizing on those opportunities in an effective way. But don't give up. Don't take no for an answer. Take it as a not right now. And try and stay positive. It's really hard being an entrepreneur, and particularly if it's a product that's near and dear to your heart. You have to have a thick skin, but it's just one day at a time is what I tell myself. Even now, it's what I did when I had my own company, and even now it's just one day at a time.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I encourage everyone to go to the Partake website for sure and check out the offerings. If you go to partakefoods.com, you can also follow them on Instagram at Partake Foods. If you're looking for the Ben & Jerry's flavor on the Ben & Jerry's website, you can search for where to find a specific flavor. So that's a good way to see where you can get a pint of the oatmeal dream pie near you. And then is there any other links, or can people connect with you on LinkedIn, or what are any other places?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. And I'm happy to chat with anyone about anything sales related, sales strategy. I love it. But you can also find the Ben & Jerry's flavor in their scoop shops.
Oh, nice.
I will say it is dairy based in their scoop shops, but they have a sundae that features our snickerdoodle cookies as a little topping as well. So it's a really delicious sundae.
That's awesome. That's so fun. Well, thank you so much, Marlo. This is awesome. I so appreciate you responding to my cold message to you saying, hey, can we do a podcast about this? This has been super fun and valuable. And yeah, so appreciate that you reached out to kick off this amazing collaboration for consumers like me to try, and all the work that the Ben & Jerry's team did. So to get to see the behind the scenes has just been really cool. I'm so grateful that you shared with us.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been really fun. So thanks, Jessie.
Thank you for listening in today. I'm so honored you joined me for this conversation, and I love hearing from you all with feedback, suggestions, or if you just want to say hi at podcast@startupcpg.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. If you liked this episode, we'd love for you to share it with a friend or colleague, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and maybe even leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you aren't yet in our Slack community of founders and experts, we'd love to see you there. You can get the free invite at startupcpg.com and find all our other awesome resources there, like webinars, databases, the blog, the magazine, and virtual and in-person events. And if you found yourself rocking out to our intro and outro music, which I do every single time, make sure to check out the Super Fantastics on Spotify. It's the band of our Startup CPG founder, Daniel Scharf. I'm Jessie Freitag, your host and producer, and on behalf of the whole team at Startup CPG, thank you for being here and see you next week.